是啊是啊，多亏您主保佑，那家伙虽然有点花架子，最后还是被我们打跑了。
The Chinese RPG genre doesn't get much love in the West. Only a couple of CRPGs find their way over here. With that said, the latest entry in the long-running Sword and Fairy CRPG series, developed by Sopstar Entertainment, has surprisingly landed on PS4 in the West. To be honest, I hadn't heard of the series before. However, after learning about the recent entry, it intrigued me due to its emphasis on ancient Chinese mythology alone. While the game's world and narrative are rich and deep, its frustrating and sloppy performance issues completely damper what could have been a great and original CRPG. I'm Brad Crespo, and this is Noisy Pixel's review of Sword and Fairy 6.
喂，敢多管闲事，我就宰了你们！
Similar to that of Chinese folk tales, the story in Sword and Fairy 6 is a beautifully crafted and told tale. Players embark on a journey to uncover ancient secrets and slumbering beasts, and a world torn by wearing factions and deception. During their epic quest, players follow two warriors who are on the search to find something they lost, but actually end up discovering ancient secrets as they explore the world and its towns. What makes Sword and Fairy 6's story so great is how the main characters, and even all of the supporting characters, have distinct personalities. All the characters have their own struggles, strengths, and ambitions that just make them easy to connect with. With no prior experience with the Sword and Fairy 6 series, I was concerned that I'd go in not having a clue who the characters were at all. However, thanks to the in-depth dialogue, even though the localization quality is decent at best, anyone that's new to the series will truly be able to enjoy all of Sword and Fairy 6's characters. The delivery of the narrative, however, can be exhausting and cumbersome for most players. This is predominantly due to the narrative being told through very long, frequent cutscenes that have extensive strings of dialogue. While these scenes do add to the game's character development, they can drag on for a good while. I feel that a majority of the cutscenes didn't actually need to be cutscenes. They could have just been normal character interactions that gave the player the option to skip lines of dialogue if they so choose. For players that can muster up the patience for the cutscenes, however, they'll find that these scenes offer excellent character development. While the epic story is what will draw most players in, Sword and Fairy 6's performance issues are downright terrible and will push players away. With Sword and Fairy 6, all parts of the game, even parts that aren't busy, bring inconsistent frame rate issues. This, unfortunately, hurt my experience with the game so significantly that I got frustrated playing it because of having to deal with the frame rate dropping every single minute. Not to sound overly dramatic, but playing Sword and Fairy 6 can be potentially headache-inducing. Just like the performance of Sword and Fairy 6, the game's combat is bizarre and messy. The combat system is similar to that of the one in Final Fantasy XIII, as it's a real-time and turn-based fusion. In battles, players take control of one character and choose from a set of commands, like skills and items, all the while assigning a set strategy for the other characters in the party. Combat does take a bit to get a hang of, and unfortunately, the tutorials aren't that great. With how disjointed and laggy battles are, especially because the camera goes all over the place, players will most likely resort to using the auto battle feature or change to the turn-based mode instead. With all this said, I do like how the attacks are nice and flashy. Outside of battles, players can explore Sword and Fairy 6's vast open world, with light platforming puzzles to solve, side quests to complete, and a slew of character systems and customization options to dive deep into. All the systems and customization options, like costumes, within Sword and Fairy 6 do add more depth to the game, which I enjoyed. Now, I'm not one that thinks games need to have superior quality visuals to be considered good, but it's clear that Sword and Fairy 6 looks very outdated. It's not a big issue, but some players may be put off by the game's low quality looks. The soundtrack, though, deserves praise as it's absolutely beautiful. With its multiple issues that are hard to ignore, Sword and Fairy 6 is unfortunately a major disappointment that could have been so much more. Sword and Fairy 6 does have a well-crafted story and a glorious soundtrack, but sadly, every other element of the game is messy and leaves much to be desired. Perhaps with a huge patch or update, the game will be worth playing through, but in its current state, it isn't worth the trouble. Noisy Pixel is giving Sword and Fairy 6 a 5 out of 10. Thanks for watching. You can read our full review at noisypixel.net. Noisy Pixel is ran by a group of gamers who work hard to deliver news, reviews, previews, and more. Please subscribe to keep up with all of our future content.